Hello, hello. And, well, it probably won't be New Year's when this goes up, but I'm currently recording this on New Year's Eve. So, Happy New Year. This is probably going to be the last, probably the last piece of, the audiobook for book 3. I think at least. Yeah, should be. So it might be a little longer. I'm gonna say something right now. Shit gets a little heavy past this point. If you're not having a good day, maybe wait till you're, in a better headspace before you're listening to this one. It's nothing horrible. Well, no. Some of it's a little horrible. But well, you'll see. You'll see. Just a little bit death warnings and all that. So, just without further ado, let's continue from where we left off in the last part. Oh, I just realized something. This will probably be the last one of these I do with this voice, because come January 11th, I will be debuting my new streamer voice I've been working on for a while. I think you're really gonna like it. I like it. It fits a lot better. But yeah, and I'm, knock on wood, gonna be getting back into more consistent streams, having a schedule, especially with like art and stuff, maybe like video game streams some night, art streams another. You're not here for that, you're here for the book. Okay, let's keep going. Ray had found herself somewhere she never wanted to be again. After she had followed Nonami into the temple, Ray had found herself in a weird, dark place. So dark, in fact, that even her new night vision powers had been useless. There she had wandered for several minutes, before finding what looked like a closed doorway, with light spilling out from behind it. Opening that door, she found herself in a hotel room. A very familiar hotel room, in fact. It was the same one she had been in a year ago, when she had finally decided to reveal her true self to the girl she'd been dating for the past 2 years. And unless Ray's eyes were deceiving her, history was about to play itself out all over again. There you are, came the smooth as silk voice of Hitomi Nakadai. I was wondering what the holdup was. Glad you're okay. She came over to Ray, wrapping her arms around the girl and kissing her. So, what's the deal, babe? You said you had something to tell me? I'm all ears. Ray desperately wanted to say anything else. She knew how this all ended already. She had stood back, removed her yokai crystal, and transformed. Hitomi freaked out and ran for the door, though Ray had done her best to explain. In the end, though, while she had agreed to keep Ray's secret, the two had broken up, something that had left the Oni distraught for months. I have something you need to tell you, Tomi. About me. Though Ray's mouth wasn't moving, the words came out all the same. Hey, whatever it is, I got you, smiled Hitomi. Ray grimaced internally as she felt her arm reach up to the crystal around her neck. Every fiber of her being was screaming at herself to stop. Don't do it! You know what happens! But it made no difference. The crystal came off. Ray became an Oni, and Hitomi screamed. This time, however, things went differently. In a flash, the human had grabbed her purse and had pulled a knife out, holding it shakily in front of herself. Get away from me! She screamed. Get away from me! Tomi, it's still me! I'm still the same Ray! Cried the Oni. This is just what I really am! Please, don't be afraid! I love you! A confused panic seemed to overtake the woman. She started shaking her head, laughing weakly. No, you're not Ray. No, you're not. She lunged, the knife aimed at Ray's chest. Instinctually, Ray raised an arm to deflect the blow, slamming into Hitomi like a truck and sending her flying into the wall. Ray didn't need to check if she was okay. The unnatural position at which her head lolled was indication enough that she was dead. No. Please, no, sobbed Ray, falling to her knees. Why is this happening? Hyoka was very confused right now, because it looked like she was home. Stretching in front of her was her snow-covered hillside, and behind her she could hear the familiar sounds of Gohan, grunting frustratedly as he played Call of Duty with Junji. The last thing she remembered, her friends had all gone into the mysterious temple and vanished before her eyes. Not wanting to be left alone, and certainly wanting to make sure they were okay, Hyoka had gone after them. There had been a momentary sensation of falling through a black void, and then... I'm home? She whispered. It sure seemed like it, but how was this possible? How could she have been transported thousands of miles in seconds? Hyoka? The voice from behind her caused Hyoka to jump. Junji must have seen her appear, as he had a puzzled look on his face. When did you get back? I thought you were going to be gone at least a week. There was this temple, and... A hissing sound cut her off. A loud, rustling sound came from the nearby brush, and Hyoka instinctually put herself between whatever it was and Junji. Stay behind me, love. I think I know what it is. Gohan? Charging through the door with a mighty bellow, Gohan's bulky form was at Hyoka's side in a second. In the second it took for Mizuho Kirishima to slither strut into view. Well, if it isn't that human I killed here. Honoka, was it? Hyoka, growled the ghost, a freezing cold aura forming around her. I'm feeling nice today, so you get 2 seconds to leave before I freeze you out. 1, 2. Not even budging, the Lamia just laughed condescendingly at Hyoka's attempts at bravery. You stupid brat, she sneered, looming over her. You don't scare me. I killed you once, and I'll do it again. Gohan seemed to have had enough. Roaring like a beast, he slugged the Lamia in the gut. Unfortunately, Mizuho had been expecting that, unhinging her jaw and biting deeply into the Yeti's arm. Immediately, he staggered, falling to one knee. What did you do? Demanded Junji, pulling a small pocket knife out for all the good it might have done. What does it fucking look like, boy? Spat Mizuho. I bit him. I give him, 2 minutes before my venom completely melts his brain, which is longer than you have. Lashing out with her tail, Mizuho wrapped it around Junji and began to squeeze. It was the exact same way she'd killed Hyoka, only now she was helpless to watch the same thing happen to the man she loved. No, not helpless. Let him go, she yelled, her eyes flashing with blue energy as it began to rain heavily. Let him go! Oh, that was good. Sorry. Extending her arms, Hyoka created a massive polar vortex, which was aimed straight at the Lamia. Too late, though, did Hyoka realize that her attack would hit Junji as well. The instant it hit, both were flash-frozen solid. No longer able to balance, the bizarre ice sculpture tipped over and shattered into a million tiny pieces, just as the Yeti succumbed to the poison. No, whispered Hyoka, staring at her hands in horror. What have I done? What have I... No. Well, this is certainly unique, thought Sarah as she dodged a series of blows from her 5 enemies. In the past several minutes since she'd followed Nonami into the temple, Sarah had been facing off against something truly unexpected. 5 copies of Farah von Orlock, each equipped with her special sword, each just as annoying as the original. "Come on, Banshee, is this really all you have?" they laughed mockingly in unison. "This is just stupid," mumbled Sarah. "An illusion. Gotta be. Focus." Closing her eyes just before the 5 closed in on her, Sarah summoned all the mental energy she could muster to dispel the perceived illusion. A few seconds after they should have taken her head off, Sarah opened her eyes and found herself laying on the stone floor of the temple, a small rodent creature crawling through her intangible form. "What in God's name?" she muttered, feeling an odd sensation in her right hand. Examining it, she realized she'd apparently gripped one of the mysterious totems when she fell. Though it was a long shot, she thought, maybe this one had helped her dispel the illusion that had affected her. Now able to take a cursory examination of the area, the Banshee noticed that the others were all there too, and all seemed to be caught in the midst of nightmares they couldn't awaken from. Glancing down at the totem in her hand, Sarah had an idea. A very, very risky idea. As a spirit, she could in theory possess Nonami or Rei, and possibly use her new totem power to save them as well. Possibly Hyoka too, though Sarah wasn't as sure if a spirit could possess another spirit. The problem was that, considering the state they were clearly in, Sarah might not have the time to wake them all before something bad happened. Racking her brain for a moment, she had another idea. As well as possession, spirits have other abilities. Apportation, the disappearance and reappearance of items at the spirit's whim. Energy drain, sucking electricity out of an electronic device. And multi-presence, the ability to be in multiple places at once. Sarah had used multi-presence before, to great effect, but never had she used it in the same place at the same time before, nor in conjunction with multiple possessions. She could only hope that her mind and body could take it, as she willed herself to split into 3. It was a bit painful, always was, but to her great surprise it had succeeded. Standing before her now were 2 perfect duplicates of herself, each gripping a copy of her totem. Nodding to each other only once, the 3 Sarahs immediately dove into the bodies of their teammates, hoping with all their might they weren't too late. Though she was currently many hundreds of miles away by now, Usako was also dealing with a similar situation to her friends. Not long after takeoff, she had fallen asleep, her head laying in Emiko's lap as the blue Oni gently stroked her hair. For Usako, sleep was something she tended to look forward to, as she had always had a gift for lucid dreaming even as a small child. Until recently, her dreams had been the only place she could fly, use magic, or be a superhero. Now, though, since she could do all that and more in the real world, her dreams were far less fantastical. This one, however, had become an absolute nightmare. She was back at Tsukiyomi, in a similar state to how she had been the first night she'd been attacked by the mind-controlled Emiko. This time, though, was different. Instead of the blue Oni stalking her, it was an armored titan 5 meters tall with gigantic claws bigger than she was. Though she had never seen this being before, something about it was disturbingly familiar to Usako. Ducking behind a corner, near the gym, she took a moment to catch her breath. "What the hell is that thing?" she wheezed. "Come on, Usako, think! This is a dream, right? Just banish it!" Try as she might, though, Usako couldn't summon enough willpower to erase the thing from the dreamscape. "Alright, fine. If I can't get rid of it, maybe I'll change the area to something else." Before she could think of a proper location, though, the area around her blurred and changed rapidly. She was now stood in the middle of a desert plain, at night, the entity standing directly in front of her, as if mocking her attempt to control the situation. Who are you? Stammered Usuko.
I am the shadow in the back of your mind. The darkness that permeates your thoughts.
Though its mouth did not open, Usuko could hear its booming voice echo across the landscape all the same. Still, his words made Usuko's eye twitch. Enough of the edgy talk, she sassed. Who are you? Who are you really? Out with it. Though there was no way for her to know this, her words had left it taken aback. No one had ever spoken to him that way before.
I am Aramanes, he said flatly, and I come to you not to fight, Usuko Takibana, but to make you an offer.
Aramanes. Usuko knew that name all too well. Aramanes had been the one who'd briefly possessed her body several months ago and forced her to destroy part of HQ and fight her friends. Now here he was again in her dreams? That made her mad. Get out of my head, she declared, summoning her bat. I'm not buying whatever crap it is you're selling.
Oh, but I think you should at least listen, young Takibana. For you see, this affects more than just you.
He waved one of his massive claws, and a smoking black portal formed in front of Usuko. Inside of it, she could see scenes of violence, death, and destruction on an industrial scale. A war on humanity. So many dead, including the broken bodies of her friends.
This is a vision of what shall be once I am truly free,
Aramanes explained, banishing the portal.
However, it need not be this way. Your friends can be spared. Join with me, Usuko. You alone have the power needed to shatter the seal that keeps me trapped. Do this, and I shall make your name legendary in the annals of history, as well as spare the lives of Kurako, Sakura, Maria, Rei, Sarah, Hyoka, and of course, your dear Ayame.
Usuko couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was this guy serious? She knew he was supposed to be powerful, but... No, these guys always lie, she thought to herself. It's always, oh yeah, I'll totally spare your friends, and boom, betrayal. However, before she could answer with just that, the area around them began to illuminate with a blinding white light, causing the demon to recoil and roar in pain. From the center of the light came a winged figure, a person carrying a flaming spear. Someone Usuko thought she'd never see again. Mom? She cried, tears already forming in the corners of her eyes. The figure turned back for a moment, nodded once and smiled, before turning her attention back to Aramanes. Foul demon, leave my child alone and be gone! She declared, stamping her right foot on the ground, creating tremors. In the name of the holiest of holies, you have no right to be here. I banish thee! Begone! With a final impotent roar, Aramanes dissolved into nothingness as he was engulfed in the divine light of Tatsuya Takibana. With a heavy sigh, she turned around just in time to be tackle-hugged by a now-crying Usuko. She could almost have been mistaken for an older version of Kurako, as Tatsuya looked for all the world like an older version of her younger daughter, with only a medium-length braid on the right side of her face and no glasses or freckles. Oh, Mommy, is it really you? She whispered through the tears. I've missed you so much. Yes, my little one, replied Tetsuya softly, hugging her daughter right back. I have always been right here with you, staying at your side. You've always been my sunshine, little Usuko. And though I couldn't speak to you, I have watched you this past year. watched you grow into a fine young woman, watched you learn a bit of your true heritage, watched you make such wonderful friends. Usuko was sobbing now, but even through the tears, she had to ask a question. Is it true what they said? We're angels? And that I can bring you back? The area around them had shifted once more to Usuko's apartment, and Tatsuya motioned to her daughter to take a seat on the sofa. Sitting next to her, crossing a leg over her knee, Usuko's mother nodded in her reply. Yes, though my body is buried right now, and has been rendered inert, my spirit can roam free, though limited in many ways. For one, I can only speak with you in dreams, unlike other spirits. Also, I cannot physically interact with the world like this, thus why I could give you no sign I was around. She wrapped her arms around Usuko, hugging the girl tight. It was probably one of the most painful things a mother could watch, short of... Well, anyway, I'm just so proud of you, Usuko. You're learning so much, so fast. You're a natural prodigy. I'm just lucky, smiled Usuko. But I wouldn't be half the person I am now without my friends. Nonami and Rei and... Oh, but I suppose you already know them, huh? Yes, a bit, giggled Tatsuya before turning serious. Usuko, please listen to me. They're going to tell you some insane-sounding things when you get back. You need to believe them. It won't make sense, not at first, I know. But trust in me, all right? Of course, Mama, nodded Usuko. What is going on, though? Do you know? Tatsuya shook her head, frowning. Only somewhat. I only caught glimpses in a future vision I had just before it happened. The two continued to sit there for a few minutes, just hugging and taking the time to be with one another again. Soon, though, the world began to flicker, as it always did when Usuko was starting to wake up. Mama, I have to go, cried Usuko, but I'll see you again, right? Of course, my little one. Whenever you lay your head to sleep, I'll be here to greet you. I am always with you. Usuko? Hey, Usuko? Emmy was trying not to rudely awaken her partner, but the pinkette wasn't waking up. She knew Usuko could be a heavy sleeper, but this? It was like she didn't want to wake up, and... Wait, was she crying in her sleep? Questions for later. Emmy? Yawned Usuko, her eyes slowly fluttering open. I just had one heck of a dream. You're not gonna believe it. Emiko nodded. I can't wait to hear all about it, Uso-chan. But hey, are you alright? Usuko reached up and brushed some of the tears out of her eyes, smiling. Yeah, I am. Yeah. A slithering sound could be heard approaching, and both girls reflexively entered attack mode. The last time either had heard this sound, it had been that evil Mizuho woman's snake body slithering across the floor. This time, though, they were greeted by someone completely different. Another Lamia, though her scales were pale white and yellow compared to Mizuho's pink and red, and her hair was completely white. Unlike most Lamia, whose eyes tended to be yellow or black, hers were lightish red. My name is Marie Alabaster, she said with a bow. Miss Pendragon sent me to retrieve you. She apologizes for not being here herself, but she is currently fast asleep, as is Mrs. Nakamoto. Oh, that's fine, replied Usuko. So, should we stay around here for now, Miss Alabama? What? Questioned the Lamia. How did you know that? Huh? Retorted Usuko. No what? That I won Miss Alabama last year. Huh? I believe Usuko misunderstood your last name, answered Emiko in an attempt to defuse the conversation. She has difficulty with some Western names like Miss Pendragon's. Ow! exclaimed Marie. Yeah, I guess Alabasta and Alabama are kind of similar, huh? Anyway, please come with me, will ya? I can do like one Southern accent, okay? Shut up. Slithering towards the door, the two girls followed close. Tatsuya's message to trust the message still rang clearly in Usako's mind, though when the time came for her to learn what it meant, she would nonetheless be understandably skeptical. Entering Ray's mind hadn't been hard for Sarah number 2. The Oni really didn't keep any mental locks to speak of in place. Locating her consciousness, though, was proving to be difficult. Sarah had found herself in a strange, twisted version of downtown Fumizaki. The buildings resembled something out of a Tim Burton movie, with architecture twirling and twisting in unnatural ways. As she floated about, Sarah noticed an area close by that seemed to be teeming with police cars. The only sign of activity she'd noticed while in here. Figuring it to be as good a sign as any that she was close, Sarah made her way over to a structure that resembled a hotel, the cars forming a barricade in front of one room in particular. Though it was hard to tell, as the windows were oddly tinted in this strange dreamscape, Sarah could swear she could see the Oni form of Ray pacing the room. Well, this is interesting, she thought as she got closer, noticing the cop cars were actually empty. Window dressing perhaps? Or something more? Finally at the door, Sarah popped her head through and saw a sight she'd never speak of to another soul again. Slight trigger warning here. Ray sat in the middle of the room, clutching a very dead, very pallid woman's body in her arms, the head of which lolled disturbingly loose to the side. The Oni was cradling it like a baby, as though trying to wake the woman up, though it was obviously far too late for that now. Warily, Sarah made her way over to Ray, placing a hand on the Oni's shoulder. Ray, this ain't real, she said solemnly. You need to wake up, lass. We need ya. She's not moving, Sarah, sobbed Ray. I'm so good at fixing things. Why can't I fix her? Why couldn't I fix what I broke? Ray, I'm pretty sure this never happened, stated Sarah. The temple we ran into creates delusions, powerful ones to be sure. Only 'cause of the amulet was I able to break free, and it's thanks to it that I can break you free now. Ray shook her head, as if waking up from a dream. This is different. Yes, I didn't. No, this never happened. Not this way. The room began shivering, and the corpse in her arms vanished. Little by little, the room fell to pieces, leaving only a black void and a green glowing portal. With a massive shove, Sarah pushed Ray into said portal before leaping in herself. On the stone floor of the strange temple, Ray stirred and began to rise up. I'm back? She asked the air. So it wasn't real? This place is really bad. Maybe I should, move the others out. With all her immense strength did Ray try and pry. No, not try and... The hell, typo? Did Ray try and pry Nonami from the ground, but to no avail. I think that's supposed to be try to pry Nonami from the ground. Wow, good job. But no avail. The vampire was stuck fast and, judging by the look on her face, was locked in a terrible, endless nightmare. Whatever Usako had been expecting when she'd entered Lydia's office, it sure as hell wasn't this. Elizabeth Kosaka, cuffed to a chair with Modred stood by her side, Excalibur in hand at the ready. Ms. Takibana, Princess Aame, welcome, called the tired Lydia from behind her desk. Allow me to explain this, rather unique situation. First, tell me why she's in here, growled Emiko, pointing to the dampier. Last time we met, she was ready to, and I quote, pull Usako's limbs off one by one and peel the skin from her body. Oh, do show the theatrics, Your Highness, sighed Elizabeth. That was then, and this is now. I've lost my taste for revenge, at least for the moment. You do well to not stick your nose where it doesn't belong. She has important information in regards to your mother, Usako, stated Lydia before Elizabeth could further enrage Emmy. I believe you've been given the basics already, but in case you forgot, allow me to explain. We now have every reason to believe that your mother was an angel. As in biblical, be not afraid, wheels within wheels, and all of that. Up until now, angels had been more or less regarded as mythical beings, creatures of allegory in scripture and otherwise. Certainly there had been, rumors they were real, but until now we had had no reason to believe them. Lydia stood up from her desk and began pacing the room. She still didn't fully believe what she'd been told. How could she? But something about it just seemed right to her feline seventh sense. Usako, when your mother died, was there a certain smell in the air? I know this may bring back painful memories, but... No, it's fine, sighed Usako. I admit, I don't remember if she did or not, at that time anyway, but... Mom always smelled like fresh-cut roses, no matter what time of year it was. I know it sounds weird, but... All angels smell like roses, Usako, interrupted Elizabeth. It's something to do with their, divine protection, I think. Emiko wanted to speak up, to mention that after they'd fought the Takuma back during the breakout, when Usako had kissed her and the light occurred, that Usako had smelled of roses then. She also knew that this may not be the time for her to speak up. This was Usako's moment, and there would be time to mention it later. There would be time later to mention it, she felt sure. There's more, continued Lydia. Another thing about angels is that their bodies don't decay. Instead, if they ever receive otherwise fatal damage, they enter a sort of hibernation until another angel can revive them with a special spell. Usako, for us to know for certain if you're truly an angel, we'd have to, exhume her. I know this sounds terrible, and I wouldn't suggest it lightly. Believe me. But if you are truly an angel... Do it, said Usako sharply. Yes, it's fine. You have my permission. But I want to know something. Why do you all have such a vested interest in whether I'm an angel? Like, who cares if I'm that or an overus or whatever? Margaret and Lydia gave each other a look, and Elizabeth had to laugh. You mean you don't understand? She chided. Usako, dearie, if they want to have any hope of defeating our Aramanes, they need you. They need you far more than you need them. A fully realized angel would have the power to do what that ancient hero who imprisoned him couldn't. Kill our Aramanes. Isn't he like your boss or something? Asked Emiko, finding her voice in the conversation again. Perhaps, she shrugged, but I've no loyalties to him either. And truth be told, I think perhaps my former compatriots may be a bit misguided anyway. Lydia couldn't help but wheeze as Margaret let out a loud chortle. Oh, just a bit, maybe, mocked the knight. Only a tad, though. A smidgen. A trifling little pinch. I get it, groaned Elizabeth. Look, it's like this. If they exhume her and she's, pristine, I'm going to take you to the one person left who can teach you the spell you need. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Now see here, we didn't agree to that. You don't really have any other options, now do you? Usako slammed her fists down on the chair as she shook with frustration, and a wind began whipping through the room as she got to her feet. Look, I'm getting tired of people always making decisions for me. What I need to do, where I'm gonna go, how I'm gonna look, I'm tired of it. If this is gonna help bring my mama back to life, I'll walk across a sea of molten rock. I'll swim any ocean or climb any mountain. I will do whatever it takes. But I'm not gonna do it to save the world or anything like that. That's secondary at most. I'm doing this because I love my mama and I want her back. End of story. Everyone in the room stared at her, either dumbfounded or impressed. Well said, Twerp, whistled Elizabeth. So on that note, what say we go ahead and move out to the graveyard, eh? Yes, nodded Lydia. Let's go ahead and do that. Sarah 3 could tell something terrible was going on in Hyoka's dreamscape. The moment she'd entered, it was like all the energy had gotten sucked out of her, and she was moving through sludge. She soon realized that it was due to the intense, near absolute zero cold that was permeating the area she now found herself in. It looked very much like the Yukiona's hillside residence, but made of glass and buried under 5 feet of snow. Sarah found herself near a large mound in said snow and went to dig into it, quickly finding a sight most disturbing. The half-rotted corpse of a yeti, triangular sunglasses sticking out of what remained of its skull. "Well, that's going to hunt me for a while," commented Sarah as she reburied the remains. "So if that's Gohan, I wonder where Junji is. And more importantly, where's Hyoka?" It took the Banshee a while to navigate herself around the once familiar landscape and make her way to the house. Inside, she found the source of the cold and snow, Hyoka laying on the ground in a fetal position, her eyes wide and unblinking as she slowly rocked back and forth. From her body poured an endless flow of soul-chilling cold that was even starting to form ice on Sarah's faux body. If she couldn't wake her friend up soon, they might both be stuck in here forever. "Hyoka, listen to me. It's Sarah O'Malley." Oh, wrong one. "Hyoka, listen to me. It's Sarah O'Malley," she whispered into the girl's ear. "I know this whole thing seems real to you, but you're not at home, lass. You're still on the island with me, Ray, and Nanami. Take my hand and I'll bring you back." Sarah could just make out the sound of faint whispering coming from the girl. Leaning in closer, she could make out words like, "Lost control. I'm murderer. Killed. Love." "Hyoka, whatever happened, it wasn't your fault," declared Sarah. "This temple, it shows us our worst fears in the most realistic way possible. If yours is losing control of your powers, I get it. I do too. Maybe wind isn't as scary as ice and water, but I could still lose control and wipe out a city with a tornado." Hyoka's rocking appeared to have ceased at some point, which Sarah took as a good sign and kept going. "You and me, lass, we make a damn good team, I gotta say. Wind and water, wind and ice, we're the perfect mix for stormy weather. Let's learn how to control our powers together, and we'll be unstoppable." All around them, much like with Ray's dreamscape, the area started to waver and fade, disintegrating into many thousands of snowflakes that vanished into the black void. Hyoka stirred, groaning, and Sarah gave her a hand in getting up. Immediately, she hugged the Banshee like a vice, refusing to let go. "Thank you, Sarah! Thank you! She cried, frosty tears flowing down her powder blue face. "You're my best friend in the whole world. You're like my big sister I never had. Thank you." Sarah returned the hug as best she could. One of her arms was trapped in the ghost's surprisingly powerful grip. "You're a great friend too, Hyoka," she sighed calmly as another green portal opened up. "Let's get you woken up, huh?" With a jolt, Hyoka woke up back in the temple, startling Ray, who had been investigating the markings on the walls. "Oh, welcome back, Yo-Yo," she said once she'd calmed down. "Since you're up now, guess that means all that's left is Nanami." Both girls glanced over at their friend, who was writhing in terror at the dreams she could still not escape. Hyoka said a silent prayer that Sarah could save her in time. "Hey, why don't you, come take a look at this," said Ray a moment later. Her hand wrapped around a stone protrusion in the wall. "There's, a lever on the wall here. Should I pull it?" "Considering just walking into this place sent us into a nightmare realm and locked us in our own minds, that's probably not a good idea," replied Hyoka sardonically. "Meh, whatever," shrugged Ray before accidentally pulling the lever. "Oops." "Ray, you big dummy!" shouted Hyoka. "What if you just made things worse?" Out of the ground, an intricately carved stone pedestal began to rise slowly, atop which was a bowl. Inside the bowl were 4 different colored gems: red, blue, yellow, and pink. Acting on instinct, Ray picked up the red gem and a kanabo appeared in her hand. Only much different. Where your average kanabo was a simple spiked iron club any Oni might have had, this one glowed red hot at the top, though the handle was still cool to the touch, and the length of the bashing end had lengthened, with more spikes added. Inlaid in the hilt was the red gem, which now glowed with a fiery crimson light. "Whoa, cool!" cheered Ray. "I got a weapon like Nanami's now. What should I, call it?" Hyoka shrugged before taking hold of the blue crystal. Immediately it vanished, only to be replaced by... "Is this a gun?" asked the incredulous ghost as she examined the twin-barreled handgun that had manifested out of nowhere. Why do I have a gun?" The hand cannon she now held was made of an odd blue metal. Not cobalt, but seemed to resemble steel. Carved into it, much like the other weapons, was a series of glyphs that seemed to indicate waves and rivers, as well as snow and ice. Oddly, it also sported twin barrels aligned vertically on the front, one a dark ocean blue, and the other a snowy white blue. And much like Ray's new weapon, it had the same gem inserted in the side of the gun, near the trigger. "I'm pretty sure that's a Glock," explained Ray. "Never seen one like that, though. Like that before. 2 barrels. Huh. Okay, well, why do I have a Glock, then?" reiterated Hyoka. "I mean, I don't know how guns work." Accidentally driving that point home, Hyoka's fingers slipped over the trigger and fired, sending 2 streams of ice and water shooting out of the barrels, creating a deadly-looking icicle, careening through the air that Ray just barely dodged. "I noticed!" shot the red Oni right back. Sorry, squeaked Hyoka. Shaking her head, Ray went back to the bowl and grabbed the other 2 gems, though nothing unusual happened this time. At the very bottom, however, she noticed a totem half lodged in the bottom of the bowl. At the very bottom, however, she noticed a totem half lodged in the bowl. I don't know why I said bottom twice. It only took a minor application of Oni strength to wrench it free and palm it. Ray could tell right away that this wasn't going to give her any new powers, so she handed it over to Hyoka. As soon as the Yuki-onna had it in her hand, Ray noticed something was off. She could practically hear the sound of snowfall coming from the girl's mouth. "Hyoka, whisper your reply, but do you feel any different?" "A little." Okay, I think for the best effect, I'm just going to turn up the mic sensitivity here, so, volume warning. "A little!" bellow whispered Hyoka, who immediately covered her mouth as the sound of her voice rocked the entire temple. Let go of the totem," stated Ray. "A port or something, just don't hold it." Hyoka nodded her reply, though the sound of her hair shifting sounded like gale force winds, and set it down. Immediately, the noise amplification ceased. "So, you got, a megaphone or something," said Ray. "Let me try and craft you a little bag or something for that." Sarah was very confused right now. Having just walked through a sea of coagulated blood, followed by trudging through a decrepit, ruined town full of decayed corpses, She had finally found Nonami, stood in the center of an infinite blackness. At least, she thought she had, as her friend hadn't been responding to any of Sarah's calls to her. Having finally had enough, the Banshee placed a hand on Nonami's shoulder, with the intent of turning her around to face her, but instead the figure crumbled to dust in the wind. Maria? Behind you. Sarah turned sharply on her heel and beheld a sight she'd never seen before. The person she faced was very clearly Nonami, Maria, but in her vampiric state, except there was a big difference. This version of Maria looked to be easily twice, if not 3 times her friend's age. Taller and more matured, wearing a weathered and tattered black Victorian-style wedding dress. A black veil obscuring its eyes from view, though twin red pinpricks of light were still just visible through it. Maria? Asked Sarah again. Is that you? I am. I was. I will be. Oh, quit speaking in riddles, lass, sighed Sarah. Look, whatever you saw here, it ain't real. None of this is. The temple we were in, it's all an illusion. Let me help you snap out of it. Sarah reached a hand out to her friend, only to find it roughly smacked away. An illusion? The dark figure scoffed. Yes, I know this. I figured it out. After perhaps a century or so. Their words might not have been their own, but they were right, and it's taught me a great many things. How terrible of a leader I've been. How much I've let my so-called friends down. I have one of the highest partner body counts in Gardner, Sarah. Did you know that? Well, she replied, but you've been working there for so long, of course you're going to have more people die under you. It is unacceptable! It roared, the figure's shape beginning to change and resemble a red vortex of wind and energy, no longer resembling the vampire it had been. If I cannot even keep my fellow vampires alive, what hope have I of saving Kobayashi? Or Usako? Dying's a part of life, Maria, offered Sarah weakly, unsure what to do right now. I mean, take it from me, lass. We all pass on eventually. It's what we do with the time we got that matters, not just how much we got. I promise you, your old partners wouldn't want you like this. Come back to us, Maria, please. Yes, Maria, came an old, wizened voice from behind the vampire. We both know this isn't you, so snap out of it, girl. At first, Sarah couldn't figure out who the mysterious old woman was, though she was clearly quite ancient, or seemed to be. Something in her voice seemed oddly familiar to Sarah. She wore a cowl which concealed most of her features, though long silver hair tumbled out from it regardless. She walked with a clear hunch, and had 2 strange lumps on either side of her back. Are you real, madam? Asked Sarah. A stupid question, or so she thought. Yes, I am just as real here as you, Miss O'Malley, smiled the woman in recognition. Now is hardly the time for introductions, though. We need to bring my sister back. The vortex ceased its swirling, reverting back to its original form, the darkened Maria. A new expression had appeared on its features. Confusion. You cannot be here, it gasped. That's impossible. Farah, I thought you were dead. At those words, the woman pulled her cowl back and revealed her face. A face Sarah knew too well. Though ravaged by age, a side effect of Aramana's dark magic, it was a visage Sarah would never forget. Farah von Orlock. Technically I am, replied the old woman, but then I don't go by that name anymore. Francine, they call me. Franny for short. I rather like it. Little Usako would always call me Granny Franny, Granny Franny. Oh, how I miss those days. You've certainly changed, admitted Sarah, assuming this is actually you and not, well, the illusion. Fair play. responded Francine. Well, let me say something only you could know, Banshee. Fort Maximal. That was all Sarah needed to hear to know she was dealing with the real deal. It was related to a discussion the two had had once, long after she'd been in the cell. What do you suggest we try, then? Inquired Sarah. You're the magic user here. Surely you got something to bring her back. Of course I do, replied Francine. Though it'll take a bit of time to grab his soul from the other side. A massive ebon chain smashed the ground between them, and both women looked to see the Dark Maria glaring at them with undisguised hatred, burning in its crimson eyes. If you weren't dead before, you soon will be! Another chain crashed down, even closer to Francine, and Sarah rushed to put herself between the two sisters. However long you need, just get to it. I'll hold it back as long as I can. Not needing any more reply than that, Francine began drawing a series of symbols and runes on the ground in chalk, after which she began sprinkling what looked to be human ashes in the four corners of the magic square she had created. Finally, she began chanting a strange language the Banshee had never heard. While all this was happening, Sarah was grappling as best she could with the entity that had once been her best friend. It bared down on her like a deranged beast, claws slashing and teeth gnashing, trying to rip Sarah to shreds. At last, a large glowing doorway formed in the air above the circle, and a well-dressed man exited from it. He stood a good 6'5", with slick black hair, crimson eyes, and, of course, a goatee that could put your eye out. The Maria thing immediately recoiled from Sarah, letting out a long, pained howl. The tiny part of the real Maria that was still in there knew this man, and wanted nothing more than to see him once again. Her last goodbye to him had been rushed, and to this day Maria regretted not saying more. Now she had the chance, the very real chance, to say goodbye to her father on her own terms. She just needed to take it. Maria, he spoke, his voice still carrying its commanding presence even now, though his tone was nothing short of pure compassion. My precious Maria, what has become of you? You mustn't become this thing that has taken its hold on you. Return to me, my daughter. Let me see the woman you have truly become. For a moment, it looked like the Dark Maria was going to try and slice open Lugosi von Orlok's stomach. But even as the hand shot out, it began to evaporate and vanish, replaced by a very normal-looking hand, and the rest of her followed suit. The evil, the terror that had taken control of Maria, was banished as she rushed to embrace her father, tears flowing down both their faces, uncontrollably, though neither vampire cared. They simply hugged and stayed in each other's arms for what seemed to be an eternity, neither speaking, neither needing to. Since the day she'd been born, so many centuries ago, Maria and Lugosi had had a link that only existed between a parent and their child. She was his little princess, and he was her papa. Now, in this moment, Maria felt like that little princess once more. She knew it could not last forever, though. Papa, she whispered, I love you forever and ever. And I love you, my precious, darling little princess, he replied. You've made me as proud as any father could have ever hoped to be. More so, even. You've grown to be quite the strong young woman. Always remember, your mother and I are always with you whenever you need us. He planted a little kiss on the top of her head. I have to go now, Maria. Continue to make me proud. I will, Papa. Goodbye for now. I hope we see each other again someday. Not for another few more centuries, I hope. He laughed weakly, walking back to the portal, pausing briefly in front of Francine.
You have also made me proud, Farah, he said. That magic of yours. Pass it to your granddaughter if you can. Usako, was it?
I suppose I should, replied Francine, a little surprised. Thank you, Father.
With a curt nod, he re-entered the glowing portal, which closed behind him as the world began shaking like it had the last 2 times.
She's waking up, yelled Sarah. Make yourself scarce. I'll see you around, Francine. With a shout, Nonami jolted up, nearly smacking her head on an overhang and scaring the ever-loving crap out of Hyoka. That was... a terrible dream, she muttered. Oh, Hyoka, hello. How long was I out? About 6 hours, Nonami, replied Hyoka, the sound of relief clearly audible in her voice. We were so worried you might never wake up again.
Nonami began to stand up, slowly as her body was stiff and pained from the uncomfortable position she'd been lying in on the uneven stone floor. As was I.
How much do you remember? Asked Ray, coming up and hugging her friend as tightly as she safely could.
Not much, which, given what I do recall, is probably for the best, sighed Nonami. I suppose you both had similar experiences. Both girls nodded slowly and began explaining to Nonami what they'd experienced in their nightmares. Once they were done, something was quite clear. Sarah was missing. They quickly fanned out, searching everywhere in the temple, calling out her name, but there was no sign of the banshee anywhere. Not even a speck of ectoplasm to mark her presence. Their search exhausted, the 3 women met in the main entryway once more.
What do we do?
Whispered a now very worried Hyoka.
I mean, what if she's in trouble? What if she's stuck here?
There was the sound of someone clearing their throat, and everyone pivoted to the entrance. Stood there was an elderly woman in teal pajamas with red slippers and a green crystal necklace, who looked for all the world like an elderly version of Usako. Something Ray picked up on instantly.
Usako-chan?
She asked the newcomer hesitantly.
No, dearie, smiled the old woman pleasantly. That would be my granddaughter's name.
Nonami rushed past both her teammates to hug the woman, silver streaks of tears already flowing down her face.
Sister, she cried, how I've missed you. Wait,
stuttered Hyoka.
If she's Usako's grandma, then that means... I don't think you gotta worry, Hyo-Yo, assured Ray. I think even if she wanted to cause trouble, she's probably, not even capable anymore. And question is, how did she get here?
At that statement, Francine glared over at the red Oni.
Now see here, I might be old, but there's still enough magic left in these bones to seal your mouth shut, missy.
Ray has a point, though, said Nonami, wiping the tears of joy from her eyes.
How did you get here? I seem to recall you were there in my dream, but... Oh, and Hyoka, Ray, I believe I recall she goes by Francine now. Is that correct, sister?
Francine nodded, fumbling her hands a bit as though embarrassed.
Well, see, I believe what may have happened is the spell I used to get into your mind might have backfired slightly, and when you began waking up, it swapped Sarah and mine's locations. So she's probably giving my cats back in L.A. quite the scare right now.
Oh, well, that's just lovely, sighed Nonami. Perhaps it's time we head home, girls. Francine, once we arrive back in Fumizaki, I'll arrange transport back to America for you.
If it's all the same, replied Francine, I think I might stay a few days first. Haven't seen my dear Usako and Kuriko in years. I simply cannot wait to see how big they've gotten.
Unlike the rest of Japan, Fumizaki City was one of the few places that practiced Western funerary customs, burying their dead rather than cremating them. This was mainly due to the higher population of foreigners who resided in the city,
whose final wishes requested as such. This was a very fortunate turn of events today, as the group of Usuko and Emiko, together with Lydia, Madrid, Elizabeth in chains, and 2 large men with even larger shovels, began the excruciating task of digging down to the coffin that contained the final remains of Tetsuya Takibana. The Pinkette was having great difficulty even being there, as the sight brought back all those painful memories from just under 2 years ago. But she knew she needed to be here. With Emiko present, she would be able to console Usuko no matter what may occur. But even still, she kept her face buried in the blue Oni's side, not wanting to watch for fear of what might be seen. After what felt like an eternity, the first shovel made contact with the lid of the casket, and both gravekeepers began excavating around it. And eventually, they managed to get it completely uncovered. Next, a series of winches were attached to the handles, which began slowly raising it to the surface. "Usuko," said Lydia, having some trouble finding the right words. Even in her storied career, this was definitely a first. "Do you want to be the one to open it, or would you rather leave it to us? I can most certainly understand if you'd prefer the latter. This can't be easy for you." It only took her seconds to decide. Despite her overwhelming dread, she was sure she knew what she'd find in there. "I'll do it." 10 minutes later, and the casket was laying on the surface, just to the side of the hole it had been pulled from. Everyone was gathered near, though still keeping their distance as a show of respect. With trepidation and trembling hands, Usuko reached over and pulled the lid aside. Gasps erupted from the group as the overwhelming odor of fresh-cut roses wafted through the air like a cloud. Within the coffin, looking for all the world like she'd had the day she died, was Tetsuya Takibana. Though her clothes and the lining of the casket had clearly begun to rot, there was no sign of even a little decay anywhere on her body. Started Madrid. "That's not possible. I mean, not for a human, you mean?" smirked Elizabeth. "Told you so. Roses. No decay. Not even a little. Only one way to explain that." "So, what now?" asked Usuko. What do I need to do?" "Elizabeth, right? You said you know where I need to go?" The Dompier nodded, but said nothing, motioning to Lydia. "For now, we'll probably take her to HQ to be monitored," stated the cat girl. "She'll be examined by the science team, and don't worry, Usuko. Tatsuya will be in good hands with Dr. Kuma." "Well, all right," replied Usuko, not taking her eyes off the still body of her mother. She briefly considered telling Lydia about the dream she'd had on the way in, but even Usuko was having doubts about it. It had seemed real, but maybe it was just a trick of the mind? Wishful thinking and a tired brain coming together in her unconscious state? She couldn't know, not then, but as they began making the necessary arrangements to transport the body, no one present noticed a young woman crouched on a nearby rooftop, observing them all through the scope of the sniper rifle she held. As she watched, this mysterious person seemed intensely focused on Emiko of all people. On Usuko of all people. "So," she whispered to herself, her intentions masked by an indifferent tone, "I finally found you. Usuko Takibana." Below the sea, some 30 miles offshore from Fumizaki, in the cavernous ruins of Aramanabad, a great roaring echoed through the stone halls. The demon Aramanes, for whom this place was named, was growing less and less patient by the day. When he'd first been released, he'd taken on the physical form he'd had millennia ago, that of an armored ebon dragon. As time had gone on, however, it had become increasingly apparent that he had not been truly freed. His body was slowly returning to the Black Knight stone, which still bore 2 of the locks placed there where he'd been sealed away. Attempts had been made to stall this process, and even some to destroy the stone itself, but all had failed, and Aramanas was none too happy about this. He had hoped to convince Usuko, holder of the last vestige of his power worth possessing, to give him her body so he could truly be free. He had fully intended to spare the whelp's weakling friends as well, so long as they bowed, but even that had been rejected.
My goodwill spurned,
he rumbled.
Must it be this way? Must I release those who should never see the light of day?
A metallic slithering could be heard approaching, and Aramana swiveled his massive head around to the source. After half of her tail had been cut off by Sarah O'Malley in their last encounter, Mizuho had gotten John to build a prosthetic for her to replace it. The metal addition to her body prevented her from assuming a human form again, but Mizuho couldn't have cared less. "What you mumbling about there, big guy?" she asked coyly. "Got some big plans, do ya?" Instead of responding to her, Aramaz plunged his hand deep into his chest armor, producing 3 white spheres coated in black viscous goo.
"Bring me slaves," he demanded. "My children must feed."
Mizuho just shrugged and called for about a dozen of their mind-controlled servants, who obediently made their way into the chamber. Aramana set the spheres down, and they quickly squirmed their way over to the helpless servants, latching onto and ingesting them without so much as a peep. When it was done, the creatures now closely resembled the Deathstalker that had assaulted Gardner previously, though more gaunt and frail in appearance. "That was freaky even for me," admitted Mizuho. "What are those things?"
"Your kind refer to them as Deathstalkers,"
said Aramanas casually.
"They are pieces of my essence given physical form, life itself. However, they are in their larval state. These 3 must feed more in order to molt and become true monsters. Until then, they are little more than oversized amoeba. Bring more."
"Hey, you got it, Lizard Lips," replied Mizuho cockily. Cockily? How do you say that? Cocky. She's being cocky. I'm sorry. "How many do you need?"
"All of them."
Half an hour later, and the deed was done. Not one of their mind slaves remained, and the rest of the circle now watched as the disturbingly oversized Deathstalker's egg pods began to throb and pulse disgustingly, like a fetus kicking inside its mother's womb. "I don't like this," moaned Karine, clutching onto her blanket.
"I have to admit, surely the loss of all our assets was a bit excessive,"
added Russell. "Aye, if you want to take it up with a murder monster, you go right ahead, mate," stated John. "Me? I'm staying out of it." From the largest of the 3 came a noise like rusty metal scraping on concrete, and the egg atop its body burst like a watermelon. From within the guts stepped a human-like girl with lion's paws for hands and feet, a long scorpion tail with a mace on the end, and hair like needles encircling her head.
"Manticore,"
said Aramanes, introducing his newest child.
"Her needles contain a deadly poison which can kill an elephant in seconds, and which she can fire at will."
The next to be birthed had skin like bark and hair like grass and vines. Her eyes glowed with sickly green light, and her gnarled hands ended in sharp claws not unlike her progenitors.
"Spriggan. Some call them nature's guardians, but she will only seek blood to feed her garden of death."
The final 2 emerge had dark skin, glowing red eyes like coals, a pair of large leathery wings, pitch black scales covering vulnerable parts of her body, and a tail which ended in a wicked-looking blade.
Dragon, you are my image incarnate. Of the three of you, you alone carry my dark energies within you. You shall lead your siblings.
It will be our honor, Father, stated Dragon, falling to a knee and bowing her horned head in deference. Anyone feel like we just got replaced? Whispered John. Fortunately for Nonami and the rest, their trip home from Kaiju Island was relatively uneventful. No storms blocked their way, no beasts of the sea rose up to plague them, even the wind itself seemed to be blowing in their favor. At one point, just before they made landfall, Hyoka thought she saw 3 people fly out of the ocean and disappear, but was apparently the only one to do so. The moment landfall was made, Usuko was already there to greet them, first hugging Nonami tight, but upon seeing the smiling face of her grandmother, she rushed to embrace her. "Oh my God! Granny Franny!" cheered Usuko. "I can't believe you're here! How did you get to Kaiju Island?" "To be honest with you, little Usuko, I'm not sure myself," replied Francine, "but I hear you know a bit more of your heritage now, which means I have much to tell you, and even more to teach." "That sounds great," smiled Usuko. "I'll be honest, Nonami's spellbooks have been helpful, but I've always been more of a hands-on learner. But we can worry about that later. Come on, let's go see Kuriko." Walking Francine carefully, the two went off towards the nearby car Usuko had arrived in. Just as it peeled away, Hyoka and Rei came down the gangway. "Just got off the phone with Sarah," said Rei. "She's having a hard time leaving the city because of her curse." Her personal phone started ringing then, so Rei excused herself to go answer it. On the other end was someone she'd never expected to hear from again. "Hey, Kobayashi?" came the voice of Rei's ex, the same one she'd had the frightening dream about on the island. "Listen, I've been thinking, and, well, I might have overreacted last time. You think we could, I don't know, catch up? Maybe over coffee?" "Of course," replied Rei as she tried fighting back tears, a rare instance of her losing a fight. "Our usual place? Yeah, that'd be nice," she said, clearly feeling similar emotions to Rei. "I'll see you there in a couple days. Around 9? "Sure. See you then." "So what about you, Nonami?" asked Hyoka. "What are your plans now that you're back?" The vampire considered that for a moment. She really didn't have any plans, though she had told Lydia they might be gone for several weeks. The fact they were back now, so very early, and with Cryptid Rangers still around for the moment, meant she might actually have some downtime on her hands. "After all I've been through these past 2 days," she thought, "maybe I could use a break. I think I'm going to take a vacation. I haven't been home in so many years," she said to answer Hyoka. "It's been so long since I've seen my grandfather, or my son, or any of the maids. Yes, that is what I'll do." "That sounds really nice," smiled Hyoka. "Maybe someday you can invite all of us. I'd love to see the castle with my own eyes." "Well, of course," replied Nonami, smiling. The trip from the docks to Usuko's apartment wasn't a very long one, and by the time the two women arrived, Kuriko was already at the door, cheering her fool head off. She hadn't seen Francine once since the Takibanas had relocated to Japan, and as such was super happy to see her again. "Grandma! Grandma!" she cheered, hugging her as tightly as her little arms could. "I'm so happy to see you! I can burst!" Kuriko and Hyoka are like practically the same voice. "And you, little Kuro," replied Francine. "But let's get inside, shall we? It's starting to get rather cold out here." And so it was that the three would spend hours and hours catching up, Usuko telling her grandmother all about her powers and everything that had happened to them. She got a little uncomfortable when the Pinkette mentioned Aramanes, but it passed quickly, which was helped by little Chupa-chan snuggling up in her arms like a spiky, blood-sucking cat. By the time Usuko was done, all three of them, Francine, Kuriko, and Chupa-chan, were fast asleep, so the Pinkette carefully laid a blanket over them, turned out the lights, and made her way over to her bedroom. She was halfway changed into her PJs when she heard a soft rapping on her window. Pulling a robe on, she went over and saw Emiko floating just outside, her face glowing softly in the full moon's light. "Emi-chan, you startled me," whispered Usuko. "Everything all right?" "Yes, all's as well as it can be," answered Emi. "That's not why I'm here. I have a gift for you, Usuko. I had intended to give it to you on Valentine's Day, but now it's looking like you'll be busy." It was true, sadly for them. Elizabeth had been given clearance to take Usuko to the one person who could teach her the awakening angel spell, a being known only as the Sorceress, who lived in New Atlantis, the final stronghold of the merman race. Though no one had been happy with the situation, the Dampier had made it clear only she could vouch for Usuko. Apparently she knew this sorceress, and she would only trust Elizabeth's words. They were due to leave in 3 days, giving Usuko enough time to say goodbye and pack, and then they'd be off. "Emi, you didn't have to." "No, I wanted to, Uso-chan. May I come in?" Very carefully, after putting the rest of her pajamas on, Usuko made her way to the balcony, making sure she opened the door as quietly as possible, quickly realizing it wasn't necessary as Emiko had put out a silencing field to muffle the sounds. Once back in Usuko's bedroom, Emiko produced a long, flat box and handed it to Usuko. Upon opening it, Usuko's azure eyes filled with tears as she covered a gasp. Staring back at her, glinting like the ocean's waves in the moonlight, was the most beautiful sapphire necklace she'd ever seen. Its wavy pattern even seemed to imitate the sea itself, as the silver inlays were arranged at alternating angles. Immediately, she put it on and looked in the mirror. It's gorgeous, Emiko," she smiled, wiping the tears out of her eyes. "All the more so, now that you're wearing it," responded Emiko. Unable and unwilling to help herself, Usuko rushed into Emi's arms, going straight for a kiss. Embracing, both girls would go on like this for most of the night, neither knowing the mysterious figure from before watching them through her scope, as wind blew her already messy cerulean hair around more. Soon. And that is the end of War of the Yokai Book 3. To be continued in War of the Yokai Book 4, Isolated Waters, coming sometime this month. Probably. Maybe. So yeah, that's the third book. That was I'll be the first to say, at least in my personal assessment, I still think Winter Snow is a little better. But book 3's got its charms. If over the course of listening to this, if you've noticed all the little allusions to a certain early 2000s Lego franchise, do let me know, because yeah. But in all seriousness, I'm glad to finally have this one done. I know this has been going on for, you know what? Let's take a look. Let me pull up when the first one was posted, right? And just out of curiosity. Let's see. It's been going on since August. Yeah, August. It's now the last day of December. This will be going up the 1st of January. Hopefully book 4 will be a lot more consistent. Yeah. I just realized this one is, if you don't count the Christmas special, Terra Firma has more parts to it than Winter Snow. Huh. It never felt like that. I'm gonna have to like add up the time just to see. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed book 3. You're gonna like book 4, but book 4 definitely gets heavier, I will say. There was one part in book 4, which if you're on my server, you already know the part I'm talking about. But if you're not, I'm not gonna mention it, of course, spoilers. But there's one part towards the end that there's a reason book 4 took so long to write, and it's just because I did not want to write that part. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, thank you for listening. This has been Were They Okay? Book 3, Terra Firma. I had to think about that for a second. Hope you enjoyed. Oh, and you're probably wondering, well, something about this background image looks different. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Yeah, this is the updated Usako look. I figured giving her messier bangs was better. Let me just real quick here, right? Yeah. Look at them bangs. I love Usako. Just last night, I had a dream where I hugged her. I think that's part of why I wanted to do this today. I love you, Usako. You are my child. Okay, anyway, that's the end of the video now. I hope you enjoyed. See you in book 4. Have a great, happy New Year. And sayonara.